So excited. Michelle, thank you for coming here and agreeing to do this. I am a avid, long time, just constant learner of all things sort of holistic health, and this is just one element of all of that. So I'm super excited to hear your amazing knowledge and expertise in this conversation today. And I'm also excited to create this space for people to come up and ask questions. So I think that's how we're going to run this room is guys in the audience, feel free to come up and ask any questions that are on your mind in regards to this, the tongue, the mouth, etc. And then Michelle will go from there and stand in her power, and we'll go from there. Michelle, how does that sound?
That sounds
And
amazing because I certainly I didn't prepare anything. I'm really good with Q&A. I'm fueled by people's curiosity and just meeting them where they're at.
and
And I also
and
want to
Michelle,
say, oh yeah, I should give us a little background to me. I also want to say that I just invited the oral facial myologist, the tongue trainer. There is a career, there is a whole field that is this thing who has we're really complementary in our work with people, and there's just bring different things to the table, and she has knowledge and ways of explaining things that I don't. So I'm hoping that will kind of broaden and enrich the conversation. I don't see her yet, but her name is Carly Schneider, and she should be on soon. My own story. Um, so, oh, Dr. Daniel Riders wants to come up to the stage. Welcome, Daniel. I'll finish introducing myself and then we'll take the first question. So I'm excited about the excitement around this topic now because I've been kind of banging on things and making noise about it for maybe 15 years. And suddenly it seems that the receptivity and um, the audience exists for this knowledge now for whatever reason. And part of that may be due to the fact that a journalist named James Nestor from San Francisco wrote a book called Breath, which I imagine many of you have heard of. And suddenly this really weird topic, right? Like if you start talking about the tongue and then you start talking about how important it is to breathe through your nose at night and how you might try a little piece of tape on your lips and people just start kind of going, huh? Like that it's a little bit um not very much of a mainstream idea yet, but it's becoming that. And one of the reasons I'm so excited about this is because I mean I've been a family practice doctor now. I got my degree in 2000, um, and then I guess it was 2005 that I started seeing patients and working with the dentist Eric Nordstrom, who developed the osteopathic approach to orthodontics, which doesn't use force. Uses setting up the force vectors in the body to allow the tongue to create enough space for all the functions of the face. Like, yes, there becomes enough room for the teeth to not only look right cosmetically, but also function well in terms of jaw function and creating enough space for good breathing and even allowing for the balance of the inner ear and the vision system. And so I really went on instinct that this was something that I really needed to know. And I would say at least 50% of patients with anything have a big unidentified component related to this that's standing in the way of them and full wellness. It's huge. And the fact that almost most people I meet, including physicians, really haven't even heard of it. Um, haven't even heard of this as a field of study. So I'm more than excited to be here and ready to take the first question, unless there's anything anyone wants to say and for me to clarify in what I just shared.
I'm just happy to be here with Jordan, Harrison, Michelle, and Ingrid, and all of you folks.
we're happy to have you, Daniel.
Yeah. Well, that's I am a medical doctor, 7 years of medical school, and I went to an osteopathic medical school, which is maybe 11% of the schools or is it 11% of the medical doctors in the nation come from this osteopathic root. And then of the physicians trained in osteopathic schools, really only a tiny percentage end up truly embracing the roots of the philosophy of osteopathic medicine, which dates back to the mid 1800s. So what is it? It's basically looking at the body as a complex interplay of mechanics and energetics and circulation. It's basically biomimicry medicine. How does the body actually work? And if we are able to assist it in restoring to full function in all of those areas, that it has the ability to basically self-correct. And it's in its original form, not very drug or medical intervention oriented. So it's very natural. It's natural medicine. It doesn't make anybody that much money. It's not a sexy high tech area of medicine, and so it doesn't necessarily receive a lot of airtime. Does that answer your question?
And and Jordan, that's why I think it's so exciting to have this room today, to expand that conversation around this. And Michelle, thank you for being here. I'm one of those people that read that James Nestor book and got fascinated with all of it. So I'm in that camp, and I definitely have some questions I want to throw to you within that field. But I do want to do a very quick room reset and then throw to Daniel and Ingrid. And anyone else in the audience, feel free to come up, raise your hand. We'd love to have you part of this conversation today with any questions that you have. We are holding space for you to have your questions answered. But with that, Daniel, we'd love to throw to you if you wanted to jump in first with any questions you wanted to direct at this topic, and Michelle.
Well, thank you, Harrison. Can someone mute, son? Thanks. Um, a month or two ago, I had a webinar where I had one of Michelle's students, Carmine Thomas, give a talk to the functional medicine group about the type of osteopathic medicine. There's the usual group, and then there's the elite group like Michelle that really understand that this is energetic medicine and so forth and so on. And so um, I learned so much from Thomas and from Michelle, and I'm just so glad to be here. And I often recommend Felson's book on breath to everybody. I learned my pranayama, my breath work, in an ashram taught by a famous yogi, and learned different types of pranayama. And even more important than meditation is breath work, and I think that's like critical. But you can't meditate until you breathe first, and you need to breathe through your nose to have a good night's sleep. And that was so clearly put out by Felsen. I don't agree with all of his concepts, but because I come from more of a yogi ashram Bon, which is a form of Buddhism tradition. This is Daniel. I'm finished speaking for now.
Daniel, I think you hit on something important here, which is again why I'm excited to hold this space today with Michelle. Is that passageway piece, right? You could be breathing. Think of how much we breathe each day, right? And if there's an obstruction there, or if there's a misalignment, or if there's something going on that we are unaware of, then unconsciously throughout the day, we aren't optimized. And I really think that conversations like this, and again, all the stuff that Michelle does and within this field, I think it's so vital because we can step into that power and unlock those different areas. Daniel, thank you for bringing those things up. Michelle, I'd love to throw to you if anything was coming up based off what Daniel said. If not, we'll throw to Ingrid with any questions she has.
Yeah, I did have a thought that I was taught in medical school that the physiologic range of respiration rate the rate at which we breathe is 14 to 18 breaths per minute, which is more than double what the optimal range really is, which is really, we'd like it under 10. If we're truly optimized, which means we're actually coupled with the pulse of the earth, we're breathing at around 5.5 cycles per minute. And this is just, it's a different state than we live in Western culture. The potential for wellness, that it's really a nervous system thing, like the tongue palate relationship and the refinement of that whole function, and what becomes possible in terms of retraining the physiology. It's basically yoga. It's resetting the body to be able to rest in that deeply embodied, earth entrained, integrated state between the physical body and subtle body. And it can become quite a spiritual idea, in that one of the things that I've learned from correlating in the teaching with the teachings of Vedic philosophy, for instance, is that the roof of the mouth is actually considered a location of a chakra, and it provides a gateway of communication between the heart and the higher centers. So right tongue function conceivably could open the door to more intuitive abilities and connection with our higher selves and higher knowing. Deep stuff.
And Michelle, just think how powerful would be in this era right now, where a lot of us are in this sort of state of being where this higher self and connection to higher knowing is just not there at all, right? It's just not there at all. We're not taught to listen to our intuition, into our feelings, listen into this deeper knowing that's in all of us. Instead, there's a foundation of sort of not tuning in and exerting ourselves out of ourselves into external elements. So it's a whole other conversation we could have just on that, I think. But Jordan, I'd love to throw to you if anything was coming up, and then we'll move on to Ingrid.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be a fun thing to try to explain without diagrams, because usually the visuals are helpful, and I'll point to where some of those can be located in summary after this room.
Michelle, can I interrupt you for 2 seconds
Sure.
to help with that? If you actually do have images on your phone, for example, you
Oh,
can you can upload them on your profile picture, and we can actually view them. So you click your profile and you can just quickly upload it, and then we'll pull to refresh, and we can see the image that you're talking about.
oh, I wish I'd known that. And it's on the front page of my website, which is in the link of my Instagram bio, which is it's on my Clubhouse. So if you wanted to, oh, great. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you.
Sorry,
So
sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
not at all. I'm stream of consciousness for sure. Um, so there's actually a parking place for the tongue on the roof of the mouth. There's that rough area in the front, maybe a centimeter from the teeth. And in people with physiologic, meaning normal or normal, well, normal, uh, it's rare to find this actually. So it's not exactly normal, but it's the healthy default is this natural cave toward the front of the mouth where the tongue naturally seats itself and is meant to rest all the time unless you're speaking or eating. Does that answer your question, Jordan? I'm going to try to be as succinct and short as possible with my answers.
I think he's
He's
getting the image.
So if you go into my into the bio on my Instagram, which then you just open my website, there are 3 blogs on the front page, right? They should be right there where you can open the one on the tongue. It's called Smile. It's called Your Swallow, Smile, and Sleep Are More Related Than You Think. Your swallow, smile, and sleep are more related than you think. So what happens is that because we don't breastfeed as much, right? And bottle feeding doesn't provide the same amount of suction and work that happens against the palate to create this nice spacious roof of the mouth. There's so many other reasons why the face would be crowded. Dietary, nutritional, not chewing because our food is now soft. So we don't have that vertical force in that we call it vertical power. And that's the combination of swallowing and chewing that actually grows the face forward and down and creates enough space for everything. So here's the take home message on this. If your tongue were not derailed in some way from its natural work, you would not need orthodontics. The face would develop enough space for the teeth to come in properly, and there also to be enough room for air to move in the back of the throat. Because when we don't grow the face forward and down by this right tongue action, we actually don't grow. Airway doesn't become as large. This is huge. Like most people, a good 50% of the people I treat have maybe 50% of the airway they would have if Carly, the orofacial myologist, just texted me, so I was distracted. She can't figure out how to get in, but I just sent her the invite. I couldn't reach her until just now, so I don't know what to do about that.
Pull to refresh. Put a finger on the middle of the screen, pull it down, and it will refresh the screen, and we can see the image that's now in Jordan's profile.
Oh,
and this is what Michelle was talking about.
Right. So you're seeing one of two faces, the nose breather's profile, the nasal breather's profile. And if I could put up the mouth breather's profile, then we'd have, Jordan, if you could text me that image, I'll try to do it, of the other half. You see what I'm saying? Like I'm seeing half. This is amazing, you guys. And we can do another tongue room and we'll have all of our ducks in a row. So
Michelle, you're doing amazing. This is what we're here for. We're here to support
thank
you
you
with all of this stuff.
I think I can hold your space. I can feel your space holding powers, Harrison. I think I can feel it because I'm feeling. That's just what it takes. I got into a room not too long ago and I was kind of overstimulated and tired, and I really had something to say. And I opened my statement with, can all of you people who know how to do this thing bring your attention to me and just anchor me in space? And it was amazing. That was a really fun experiment. Anyway, I've been grateful to you, Harrison, since we got on. I didn't know who was in charge, and I was hoping it wasn't me. So I'm really.
It's all you deserve it. You deserve it, Michelle. It's all good. I received the love. I do want to keep the conversation going though, because I want to make sure we hear from everyone that's on stage that wants to share their love with you. So Ingrid has come up on stage to ask a question. We'd love to hear from you, Ingrid. Whatever's.
Thanks, Harrison. Michelle, you're doing awesome. It's fantastic. So, I have a couple of questions, but first of all, we probably don't have time in this room, but I really want to know more about that little nugget you dropped about something to do with the roof of the mouth and the connection to, I think it was our crown chakra or another chakra or something, something about that. And so, definitely interested to know more about that. Um, and so I guess I'm a huge fan of osteopathy. I have been seeing an osteopath regularly for the last few years. She's been absolutely integral in my recovery from a variety of things, and I've never talked to her about the tongue, so that's why I came into this room. Although I always go to Harrison's rooms because they're always value added and supportive. And so two things. Like one, I've just heard about this idea of mouth taping very recently, and I haven't yet bought the tape to try it. So like I'm someone who I tend to hold a lot of tension in my body, which means everywhere in my body. And one of the things I remember when I don't know, I might have been a teenager, and someone told me that if you sleep with your mouth open, spiders will crawl in and lay eggs inside of you. It was probably my older brother, but it was someone really mean. Um, so after that day, I never slept with my mouth open ever again. So that's a good thing in some ways, except that what I find I do is I kind of suction my mouth closed, so I don't grind my teeth, but I sort of suction so that my whole jaw gets super tight. And so I'm kind of like, so I was trying to follow what you were saying about the ideal position for the tongue, like even just in resting state when we're awake. Because yeah, there's that sort of like from the teeth, there's like a sort of a crest that goes up, and then there's like the roof, which is way up there. And when people say you should have your tongue on the roof of the mouth, they don't mean that part that's way up there, right? Is that too far up?
I was on mute. I started answering.
Oh,
Let's see. Well, obviously not actually, because you wouldn't pass air if the tongue was really. But when you swallow or you make certain sounds like the k sound, the back of the tongue goes up and touches the soft palate, which is vagus nerve territory. So the ability for the back of the tongue to be frequently in contact with that posterior area is really, really, really important. And it's often missing, and people don't even know that. So that has to be sussed out. Um, I'm just checking like what percentage of the tongue. And I'm not by any stretch like an example of perfect spatial arrangement in my face because I wasn't breastfed as a child. So that set me up for some of this crowding that it's like I'm personally intimate with some of these problems. Yeah, from personal experience. So did I answer your question?
yeah, so I guess, the very, very tip of the tongue probably just touches the teeth a little bit, if it's resting naturally. Is that fair to say?
You mean in your mouth or, well,
In
so
my mouth.
academically speaking, and ideally the tongue would not touch, the tip of the tongue would not touch the teeth, but very few people have room for that. I would say the contact to the center of the palate, there's a actual meeting place of four bones there, and the sphenoid, which is the main cranial structure that kind of is it's the junction that determines tight, not tight, or breath, not breath, or energy or not energy running in the whole body, is that center of the skull. So this tongue contact on the palate, kind of with every swallow, it's about a pound of pressure running vertically. If the tongue's doing its right job, there's this little nudge on the sphenoid that keeps that sphenobasilar symphysis, to get really technical, that has the whole skeleton kind of be able to pulse rhythmically, and behave more like a behavior than an object. Like the whole skeleton needs to breathe. The whole body is never static in its way of being, for a better way of putting it. There's nothing solid about us, and to the extent that we can live connected to our fluid essence moment to moment, then like the thing I keyed in on that you said was this tension that you hold in your sleep, even though your mouth is closed and you're thinking your tongue is kind of in the right place. So there's some way that your body registered vigilance or defense, and either it's patterned into the nervous system, or there's kind of a habituation that your whole skeleton made to reflect the nervous system state that has to be retrained in the reverse direction. And the first thing that I thought of, and that came into mind when you're speaking, is buteyko breathing as a way to kind of retrain the nervous system back down. And then whatever the nervous system's doing, the life force circulation is doing. And then whatever the life force circulation is doing, then the structure is, its form follows function. The structure begins to reflect that freedom and flow in the subtle body. That's the order of things. That's a little bit of the osteopathic secret sauce that is also, it's understood in the Eastern approaches to medicine, but that's the most non-Western part. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I think there's a lot there for me to learn, and I won't certainly ask you to say all of that here. I just had one little follow-up. Someone mentioned recently, I was just talking about a scar that I've got in the middle of my tongue. When I was 5, I bit through my tongue, And so I've got, I had stitches back then, and so I've got a scar. And someone said, oh, I wondered, they thought that might have an impact on some of the meridians and things like that on my body. And I wasn't sure if that's something you have any knowledge about, but that was curious to me.
I haven't had experience with that, but that's curious and worth investigating and really interesting. And I think about neural therapy and how traumas kind of fix in the tissues and then dissociate subtleties of, nuances of relationships between structures. People are so individual, that's something to really look at.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of the information. This is fascinating.
Thank you, Ingrid. And thank you, Michelle, for answering so beautifully, as you always do so far in this space. I do want to do a very quick room reset for the people that are down there listening, and then we'll go right back to the questions. Before I do that, if everyone PTRs as well, you can see on my profile picture that I have the mouth breather image to the opposite of the nose breather image that Jordan has. So you can check it out there from reference to what Michelle was saying. Everyone in the audience, this is a room about if you knew all that you knew about the tongue, an osteopathic view. Michelle is here giving us her valuable time to answer questions and give you support and love and guidance within this area. So if you'd love to come up and ask your questions, please raise your hand and we'd love to invite you up. If you guys are enjoying this conversation, I have a feeling we'll probably do it again. So please follow the moderators so you can get notified and join the Holding Space Club so you can be notified of future rooms. With that, before we move to Gina, I'm going to take advantage of my mod power and chuck in a question here, Michelle, because I know it's something I'm curious about and I think it'll apply to everyone listening. Say that we are shifting from being a chronic mouth breather to a nose breather, and we have these symptoms of potential crowding of the teeth, or we have, the airway has been obstructed. What in our adult form, because I know a lot of this sort of the jawline sort of forms as we grow up, but as we're an adult now, what are some of the remedies that we can move through? Like, for example, you've talked about shifting your breathing habits, and I know, the osteo block is an example of something else. I was wondering, what are some of the things that we could be looking out for to shift this?
Wonderful question. And guess what just happened? Carly Schneider, oral facial myologist, just made her way to the stage. Welcome, Carly.
Hi.
Yeah, I want to say before I launch into one version of this answer, and Carly may have another, there's so much to say about it. And I want to tell everyone that I wrote an article that summarizes basically a do-it-yourself approach and then indications for referral as well that comes from that piece that Jordan grabbed that picture from. So if what we're saying doesn't land or you don't capture it, one thing that could be cool is if people go and reference that article and then harvest their questions there, and then we can circle back and do part B of this, because I think we're just getting started. So let's see, to put it simply, how would you go about reversing? I do actually wish, Jordan, that we had the second image for comparison. You've got the well-formed, well-proportioned face. Oh, okay. So I open your face and then I must not
Michelle,
know.
if you touch the middle of the screen, you pull down and it will refresh the stage.
Oh, got it. I see it. I did. Now I got it. Okay. So I want to make a point here to everyone that that we can all at any age go between these two formations. And this is where we get into the quantum thing, because the word on the street is that, to really reform a face, you have to be a young person that's still growing. However, when you get into this opening up of the life force circulation and literally shifting the density and fluidity of structures, and we know this is possible because we see these ancient yogis and, Tai Chi masters doing this really fluid movement as though they're not solid well into their later years. Now, most of us don't move this much chi, but if you want to be a person who basically remodels their anatomy later in life, the possibility exists if you are able to open up the meridians and get that chi flowing and literally remodel the bones. So, what do I do as an osteopath? And as Dr. Daniel Reiters was saying, that the form of osteopathy that I practice and Dr. Carmine Van Deven practices that Daniel just interviewed is kind of this more energetic, more esoteric, not mechanical, definitely almost a shamanic practice where you touch in and have a relationship with and go on a journey with the subtle body, such that I don't actually do anything. I hold space for the body to express in this way and almost refresh to some original capacity, the design of which may be lost under several layers of dissociation. So we go to connect the person as you would with meditative practices or yogic practices that are able to really help the individual get back in touch with their spiritual self or their subtle body, physical body integration. So when you can render yourself moldable, that's kind of the esoteric piece, then you start to work with the tongue, with exercises. Like, I try to make it fun and enjoyable and not too tedious. I have people, and this is really Carly's domain. And then I'll speak to devices that we can use also to make things go more quickly, or to what are you asking me, Jordan? I just saw a text from you. I'm not sure that was you. Was that you, Jordan? Asking me something? No. Okay. Maybe that was Carly. So we're talking about do-it-yourself fix-its when you're too crowded, to refresh the question. Is that right, Harrison?
Yeah, I was getting at, you sort of answered it in terms of, we can change it and we can make a shift here even in adulthood. And yeah, do it yourself, not just do it yourself, but so like the tongue practices, for example, and the changing of the airways, but also devices. And I would add, that malleability that you're talking about, would that connect to teeth crowding as well? Do you think that is reversible in this sort of way that you're talking about?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have this happen all the time. My own child, that her orthodontist said, "Oh, she'll be needing braces for sure." And I was like, yeah, I don't think so. But we just went about, and Carly knows this because she treated my child, and my daughter is not the most disciplined kid. And I didn't even treat her that much, and she didn't do most of her homework. And still, somehow, the body just receiving a little nudge in the right direction seemed to draw on its memory for right function. It's really remarkable what the body's capable of. I want to remind you guys all of that.
Yeah, I mean, Michelle, thank you for answering that. I want to get on to our next questions because we've had a few people join up, but I agree with that, Michelle. And it's interesting, just in my work and the things that I do, that has been the one area for me, just personally, that I haven't seen that shift occur. I've seen it happen all in my body in general, like that innate regeneration and getting back to a state of homeostasis, that if you just get out of your own way, the body's going to get back there if you remove the barriers. But it's so empowering listening to what you say, because it makes sense to me. It just makes innate sense. So thank you, Michelle. Thank you for answering. A very quick room reset for the people that have joined. Carly, thank you for coming into the stage. Feel free to jump in with anything as people are asking questions, because I know this is your area of expertise as well. For the people down in the audience, we are talking about the tongue, the mouth, the teeth, this osteopathic view that Michelle and Carly have given up their time to join us with today. So if you guys have some questions, please come up, and we'd love to have you here. With that, Jean, welcome to the stage. Feel free to drop any questions if you have any.
I'll make this really short because I'm excited to hear what Carly would have to say as well, but I'm curious about how the work of Weston Price overlaps with this osteopathic view. I'm sure, Michelle, you must know who he is and his work, and as a dentist and early anthropologist, that's how I've stumbled across his work.
Yeah, thanks, Gina. Thank you for being here. Uh, I wrote a lot about this in the one piece that I wrote only because I didn't find a better, more succinct source anywhere. That's on my website. So it's all about that. In fact, if I found a video on YouTube it's a lay produced, not particularly scientific or medical, although it does include some. It's called Attractive or Not. And it kind of goes through the whole arc of back maybe 150 years and includes how Weston Price, you know, this dentist who traveled the globe and looked at all of these uh, tribal communities whose facial proportions and development were really superior to Westerners. And and so from that, he derived that there were these practices called the traditions, the nourishing traditions of these different communities, and that was the culmination of this book. Well, his book, and then many that have come since. And a lot of it has to do, as I think I referenced before you got on, with the nutrient levels, but also the ways that we eat. Don't have to work as hard to break down processed food, like we don't have to chew that much. Um, and simply how over time, and James Nestor, the journalist, went into this in depth in his brilliant book, Breath, that we talked about when the room opened, that the skulls of humans have simply deteriorated in their integrity in terms of over the last multiple decades, and it's continuing to go in a not so great direction. And so Weston Price wouldn't be happy with what he's seeing now. We certainly haven't turned the trajectory around. Do you want to add anything, Carly?
Well, am I talking to a dentist now? Did you say? Was the question asked by a dentist?
No, Carly, I'm actually an anthropologist, so that's
Oh
how
my,
yeah.
okay.
I love knowing other traditions. It's great.
I just thought I heard you say that. So, well, I was going to answer it from a dental perspective. So, chewing, just using our face the way it was designed to be used, using our chewing up and down with proper motion is what develops the face forward. And and we, like Michelle said, we look at all these evolutionary changes. They noted a change, I think, in the 14th century in Europe. I'm kind of guessing these are old test questions I had many moons ago, but there was a development of sugar, and that significantly changed the skull. It changed our breathing, and hence the skull. And then the Industrial Revolution was another big change. But generally, when I work just with just my moms, my new baby patients, I'm just saying, just get that kid chewing, just get the jaws going. You go to Whole Foods and all this wonderful, clean, organic food, but it's in a squeeze bottle, right? So, but anyway, I don't know if I got off topic, but I just want to say, just chew. And then along with chewing, if it's properly done, comes the rest of the development of the face, which is when the face is organized and the tongue is hitting the roof of the mouth, all up and down, up and down. The tongue should hit on the palate. They say approximately 2,000 times a day. I still think that's a lot, but a lot of times it hits the midline suture. That's where we expand and we grow forward. We also need to hit there for speech and every single tongue movement. So our tongue is constantly pulsing the palate, which does all sorts of other great stuff. Michelle could go into detail of all the cranial processing it does. And then our tongue just locks up there like a little magnet when we're done using it. And that creates the whole entire support system for the palate and the jaw. And then we're, of course, nasal breathing. So it's a complex movement that's gotten way thrown off for a lot of humans. And that's what makes my practice really busy. Anyway, I don't know if I can answer. I can keep
I
going.
want to add one more thing that I think, do you know the timeline on when it was that cooking was introduced? Because when foods became softer, we began to use our faces very differently. And I think that goes back a long, long time, hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Obviously. When did we start cooking food? Probably pre Were
A
you
long
going to say
time ago.
something, Harrison? Yeah, a long time. Gina, you might know. Um, yeah, before Christ, probably.
I was just
Really? Are you just pulling that out of the air, Jordan? Oh,
Carly, just based off what Michelle was saying, if you put your Instagram on your Clubhouse profile, that's how people can access you. That's the main sort of messaging sort of alleyway that we use here on Clubhouse. You just attach your Instagram to your profile, and then anyone that's interested in your work and wants to follow up with you, etc., can go onto your Instagram and then shoot you a message.
great.
So if you
Okay, I'll do that.
all good. Linda, welcome to the stage. We'd love to hear any questions you had for these beautiful women tonight. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I came late to the conversation, but I wondered if you could clarify something. I was told that in order to make your tongue stronger, you should take the tip of your tongue to the roof of your mouth and then slide it back so that it's curling back and, so to speak, the bottom of the tongue is on the roof of your mouth. And I'm wondering what you thought about that.
That's a great exercise to kind of stretch out your lingual frenum in one of its positions. But and it's an okay exercise. I think there's many better ways, but it's an exercise. I wouldn't say that's the one. I'll tell you one of my favorites. I mean, everything's case dependent because people need different things. Some people go a lot of people go asymmetrically across their mouth. They have, their teeth will be off. Usually if the tongue moves in a little bit off center so that your teeth don't really match up. So I have a dental background, so we kind of look at the whole thing, and then then the jaw gets a part of it, and then it can move to the neck. So it just kind of keeps flowing through the body. But the teeth and the tongue is kind of where I hold my focus, in the jaw, those three places. But yeah, that's an exercise. I call that slippery slide back. That's just an old exercise I've been doing for years. I use it a lot after a frenectomy, a release of the frenum. Sometimes that's real tethered, and we either laser or surgically release it. But it's one of the stretching exercises for the frenum is what I use it for. And it also it reaches the styloglossus muscle, which is the muscle that lifts the tongue up and pulls it back up into the mouth where it should be. And that one's really weak on everybody. So it kind of accesses that one a bit. So it's a good exercise, actually, the more I think about it.
So when you say take the tongue on the roof of your mouth, are you taking the top of your tongue, the entire top of your tongue on the roof of your mouth then?
You mean as what we want ideally in an ideal world? Is yes. We want most of the tongue to live on the roof of the mouth. On an adult, sometimes we get, as much as we can. I shoot for the whole thing. I try to get the whole tongue up on everybody, because if it's not all the way up, then a little bit's down, and that can, interfere with something or another. If on a kid, it's easy because they develop right in front of you. You can just watch them grow their own palates. The tongue is very forceful. It works with a lot of other cranial muscle or facial muscles, and the power is unbelievable. It's designed to create the face. That's what it does. And it gets thrown off so many ways, and it doesn't go up to the palate, and the faces don't get developed. This is the whole premise of malocclusion and crooked teeth and retruded jaws. So when we get the facial function normalized on a child, they can grow their own faces, at least to their genetic potential, and widen those kids, yes, whole tongue. Adults, some people come to me with some pretty, some hard anatomy to deal with. They just, depending on how vaulted their palate is, or how tethered their tongue is. So we always do the best we can, but most of the time I make it work. It's just, if you want to work hard enough, we can get it up there. And with one more note, if you have a great osteopath, so this is where a great osteopath comes in, because the powerful, like somebody like Michelle, is so magical, and I can work a face, and I can get the nervous system going. So I get the cranial nerves integrated to the nerves, to the brainstem, and that creates maximum oxygen to the brain. So now the person starts the flow that Michelle talks about all the time. And then you put somebody in the hands like hers, and they just kind of melt. We can just kind of change those faces. Now, this is not something that happens all the time. Believe me, I've never seen really any other osteopath be able to do it but her, honestly. But we do it in our little small group. And it's not something you can go out and find. And, if you ask your orthodontist about this stuff, they would probably send you out the door and think you were crazy. But this is stuff that if you work with the body the way we do, you can get results, really nice results.
Thank you.
Sure.
I want to say that I'm not the only one. And the discipline that covers this melting, remodeling, organic remodeling of the structure is a small segment of osteopathy that Dr. Reiters alluded to, that Dr. Devin Carmine Van Devin is a part of. It's biodynamic osteopathy. So maybe it's 5% of osteopaths who work at this energetic level. And it's an interface of imparting force and then stepping back and letting the body breathe. It's not all fluid. Like I do quite a bit of, sometimes I'll melt a face and then I'll just get an impulse from the body to grab something and pull it. And sometimes I find myself like jaws of life, like opening up the bones of the face. And it sounds kind of radical, but when it's guided by the body, my nervous system is so anchored and so still and so in response to something that I trust completely. So it is, in order to do this, even the structural parts, being able to tune into my own entrained and grounded and intuitive state is an essential piece.
Michelle, that's exactly what it sounds like to me, right? As Carly is giving you all this amazing love, it sounds like you are tuning into your higher purpose, your higher passion, the things that sort of get you switched on. The reason that you're in this work, I'm assuming here, is because you love to do it. And when you're in that sort of loving, joyous state, it's helping you connect to those intuitive choices that you're making, it sounds like. It makes total sense to me.
Absolutely. All driven by the heart, honestly. That's a whole nother layer of the conversation. I wanted to say two things that came up. One is that these different, this is to speak to your question, Gina, that the tribal peoples of the planet that have clicking in their languages and lots of forceful sounds that they make with their languages have phenomenal facial development. A lot of movement and diversity with tongue functions and forces happening. So one of the exercises I give people is to practice being one of those people. Like I play this game with my daughter where we speak in tongues and we do this. Well, not exactly in tongues, but we pretend we speak one of these languages, or we'll do percussion in the car to songs with the tongue on the palate, with suctioning. And I describe that in the little piece that I wrote on my website. It's because I find that the things that people really enjoy that involve some element of play and also collaboration with others are the things that will more naturally gravitate toward and are likely to succeed, even for the element of enjoyment that elevates the body in response to anything that we do.
Sorry, this is Heather speaking again. Do we have time for one more quick question? Harrison,
Go
are
for
you
it,
cool?
Heather.
Okay, just while I've got Michelle and Carly here. So a few years back, I kept catching my teenage son making this incredibly hilarious face when he was kind of like chilling on his own. And I asked him what he was doing, and he called it, if I remember correctly, he called it mewing or mewing or something. And he said it was something with the way that he pressed his tongue to the roof of his mouth to help strengthen and shape his jaw. Is that correct? Is that an exercise that can be done to help like strengthen or set a jaw?
Dr. Mew is a very, very famous dentist in England who started a lot of this thought process many, many years ago. And he's been one of my mentors for a long time. So he's actually got some movements they call mewing. I'm thinking that's what you're talking about. So, I've just studied a lot of his work, and he's taught me on some classes years ago. But so I don't know exactly what your son was doing, but I'm thinking that's where it came from. That'd be my first. I think it's what's his first name? I'll Google it real fast while we're here. But
Michael Mew is the younger of the, and
yes.
they're, yeah.
Oh, so, yeah, so he must have stumbled across him because he said he watched some videos and did some reading, and he's been doing it for probably close to 3 years now. I don't notice him doing it as much. He's 16 now, but definitely he did it quite often, and he said he tries to do it a few times a day. Um, like an exercise program for himself. So I had never heard of it before, and this group just kind of reminded me of what he had sort of explained to me. So it's good to know that perhaps he had stumbled across something that's been helpful for him. So thank you again for this room.
Michelle, if you had anything to add with that, feel free to jump in. I just think it's funny that's how we started this room, Jordan. We were talking about mewing, and that's how the idea began. Go for it, Michelle.
Yeah, sure. Are we trying to end soon, or do we launch into some? I have a little bit more time. I don't know what your plan was for the
I
closing.
unfortunately have to run to a meeting, so I think we'll close it off in a couple of minutes, if that's okay with
Okay.
you. But we'll
So
definitely be doing this again.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for the John and Mike Mew, senior and junior, because there's such accessibility, and there is such a diversity of videos on YouTube, including younger folks like mewing influencers who do these successive check-ins on their own progress, and they just make it really cool. So I found captured a few links of some of the ones that I love. But if you watch one thing, there's a video on YouTube called Attractive Face, Attractive or Not. And it goes into all the Weston Price stuff, and it goes into the timelines and trajectories of some of these YouTube influencers. It's maybe 12 minutes long. It's super entertaining. It really captures the attention and imagination of kids and adults alike. And I just love really high yield things that get the point across really quickly so that people get on board and we don't lose them.
And Michelle, maybe you could explain very quickly what the parameters are for mewing. So I know that a part of it is the tongue on top of the mouth, as we've been talking about so far in this chat. But there's also a part of the teeth to do with it as well. Like in my understanding, it's bringing the front teeth to be meeting together, and the back teeth a big part of it. Does that make sense?
That's for sure. Carly would be the better answer of that.
So really, here's your resting face. Okay, this is really the one thing to take from the meeting, and it takes strength to get here. But you can start with the first half inch of your tongue should lift and kind of settle in gently about 1/4 of an inch behind your front teeth. It should not touch any of your front teeth. Your tongue should really never touch any teeth because it will move your teeth, and that means you're going in the wrong direction. You want to go vertically up. Your teeth should be parted about 2 to 3 millimeters. That's the thickness of a coin. So that's our freeway space in the dental world, and that's a gentle, and these are all reflexed. And then the lips just gently sealed, and that will force you to nasal breathe eventually, and you eventually put more and more of your tongue up. So that kind of is going to sum up, a lot of mewing right there. Wow.
Well, maybe it's about the percentage of dependence on soft cooked foods, because to the extent that we've gone in that direction, we've definitely been undergrowing our faces radically for many decades. And then the dietary thing is fairly large, and I referenced some papers in the piece that those two images are from, that Jordan and Harrison have up on their icons, from an article that's right on my website front page, the link to which is in my Instagram bio, which is in my Clubhouse bio. If you touch my picture, you can scroll down and find that.
And I think just to jump in there too, and then we'll move down to Heather with her question. It's also the chewing, just from this osteopathic sort of facial and teeth perspective, so important, as we've just been talking about. But from a digestive perspective as well, getting down into the gut, the more that we chew, the more that we activate. A lot of us think that that our digestion begins when the food hits the gut, but the digestion begins in the mouth when we're activating not only the enzymes in the mouth to break down the food, but the enzymes, the chewing motion then corresponds to the gut to be ready for the food, right?
Mhm.
So the more that we chew, the more that we digest and assimilate and take on nutrients, and that whole cycle enhances. So for anyone listening, this is so important, and I'm just so grateful that Michelle and Carly are here today to really promote this conversation, because I love it. With that, I do want to keep the ball rolling. We are going to go for another 20 minutes in this room before I have to run to another meeting. Heather, thank you for coming up on stage. We'd love to give you the space with any questions you had for Michelle or Carly.
Thank you, Harrison. What a fantastic room to be listening in on. Just a little bit of a background. When I was younger, my mom had me at an orthodontist at a young age due to recommendations from a doctor. I was a very heavy mouth breather. The orthodontist I remember hearing him kind of pull my mom to the side and discuss with her about wanting to break and reset my jaw, which thankfully my mother said, absolutely not. That's absurd. You're not breaking my child's jaw. So I did, I ended up getting actually surgery to remove my tonsils and my adenoids, which I was told at the time I had, as an 8 or 9-year-old, tonsils larger than most full grown adult men, to the point where they brought medical staff in and medical students to look down my throat before my tonsils were removed. But I do remember waking up in the hospital actually feeling what it felt like to breathe through my nose for the first time, to really truly be able to take a breath. And then I spent about 3.5 years with braces, headgear. And so my question for you is, as an adult, I'm in my late 40s now. As an adult, I still find myself at night feeling like my tongue just is uncomfortable and is not resting, properly in my mouth. It's almost like sometimes I feel like it's strained and I don't know where to consciously or unconsciously place it, I guess. Is that a common thing for mouth breathers from such a young age? Like that. So that's my question for you. And is there anything I could do to maybe relax or help it? This is Heather, and I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Go for it, Carly.
Okay. So just because tonsils and adenoids are removed does not mean you instantly start to nasal breathe and swallow correctly, unfortunately. I never see it happen. I'm sure it happens once in a while. It'd be really wonderful if our ENTs would get on board with us a little bit more and still ensure that a child or an adult goes right to some breathing consulting. We just haven't. We're all seem to be slipping, and there's so many people who don't know how to breathe. When I say don't know how to breathe, swallow is such a big part of it. And you know, the breathing is so complex too, because we're all a little bit too much in sympathetic nervous system. So when you mouth breathe, to sum it up quickly, your airways, all your tubes constrict. I'm so sorry, constrict. So you can get, if your tongue's blocking, if your tongue was never taught to go up, that's a reflex behavior that has to be instilled to your brainstem. And you started off with big tonsils, so you probably had to get in the habit of mouth breathing. And then you just never developed this little sequence that I described a minute ago, where your tongue has to lift up 2,000 times a day. It has to be an automatic behavior, just like you blinked a minute ago. So that really, unless somebody kind of stumbles upon somebody like me, it really never gets completely organized, especially the back part of the tongue, which is the heaviest part to get up there. And that's the part that usually affects our sleep apnea breathing patients. When you lay down, it just drops back into the airway and occludes the airway. And that's the OSA, obstructive sleep apnea, is the tongue and the surrounding muscles that support the tongue all collapse into the airway, because we're not using that part of our body. We've disconnected from it. We don't know it's there, really. It's kind of foreign. So it's just lazy and collapses. Sorry, that's my puppy behind me squeaking a toy. I'm going to take it away from her. I don't know if you hear her. But anyway, so So as an adult, the tongue grows bigger when you don't use it properly. That's number one. It grows laterally to the sides, gets wider. It does all sorts of compensations. And probably what might have happened to you is your tongue might have just grown a little bit longer and bigger. But the good thing is tongues are reshapeable. I do it every day, all day long. They're just, I kind of use the analogy, it's like a jellyfish. If you give it a container, it will take on the shape of a container. So we give the container the palate, and we start moving it, and it gets a lot more exercise. It goes from laying low and moving forward or laterally, which is not much movement, to lifting up. The whole tongue usually is very heavy, and then rolling and dancing across the roof of the mouth all day long. And then if we lift it down to talk or eat, or it's going to fly right back up like a magnet when we're done. So that takes a ton of inherent strength, and in creating that natural movement, tones your tongue. And I don't know, they just reshape. It just happens. I've not once not been able to get a tongue up in a palate. So it probably just you need a little work, I would think. Would be my.
Michelle, did you have anything you wanted to add? If not, we'll move on to
I
Linda.
want to make sure people know how to reach Carly because I send her information around quite a bit. And I had her on, I have a study group where we kind of do some academic investigations and socializing on Facebook. And I've had her on a few times, but because I'm thinking, versus one-on-one, wouldn't it be great if we could sort of learn collectively these common issues? And patterns are so individual. And for anyone with any complexity, I think a thorough, formal orofacial myologic evaluation is really a wonderful thing to have access to. So
Perfect. Thank you, Carly. Thank
Sure.
you for summarizing that. And I think it's a good circle and end to this chat today, guys. Thank you for being here, Carly and Michelle, and all the people who have come up and asked questions. Heather, Linda, Ingrid, Gina, and all the people down the audience. Thank you for listening. We will be doing this again. So Michelle and Carly, please shoot me a message and we'll organize a time, because I mean, just from me being here, I've learned a lot, and I'm sure that everyone else has also. So I want to keep the discussion going. If you guys want to be notified about when we do this again, the best way to do that is follow the moderators and also follow the club itself so you can be notified. And also check out Instagram and notifications on there. I'm going to throw it back to you, Michelle and Carly, if they wanted to end with anything. If not, we'll close the room down.
I wanted to thank you again, Harrison, just for your expert and compassionate and supportive holding. And Jordan as well. I just feel like the combination of the four of us just felt really wonderful. And Gina and Daniel and Heather and Carly and Ingrid, thank you so much for coming to the stage.
And thank you all for having me. Jordan, you did an incredible job hosting this. I'm not sure, I didn't get the opportunity to meet you at the beginning, but you should do this professionally because you are really, really organized, and you carried the meeting very, very well. So thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Harrison. Okay, it's Harrison.